Good. Welcome to True Health Tuesdays. Now today we're going to talk about a different view of the world. Okay, and when you're talking about Ebola, this is completely different. If you look at the news media, I mean, you're talking, what more dramatic disease could you have? I mean, you're bleeding out of orifices, your organs become liquefied, it's attacking healthcare workers, bodies are piled up like cordwood, it's now spreading to America, but thank goodness, don't worry about it, we've got vaccines and modern medicine will save you. Okay, now this is what it's portrayed as. Okay, now it's wild is, now I don't know if you've heard of the Housewives of Orange County, this is in Orange County, okay? So I'd get this, wealthy businesswoman, she comes in, what do I do to protect my family from Ebola? And I go, well, first thing, the most important thing you can do to protect your family and yourself is go to the television and switch to another station, okay? Switch to Al Jazeera or Russia Today or BBC, okay, you're going to get a little bit more accurate news reporting, okay? So when we look at this, and I got to apologize in advance because a lot of the slides, there are way too many words. But we got to have this because there's such a massive amount of misinformation. And how you get information, this is how you get information for a real talk. Okay, you get the sensationalism from the NBC, ABC, government-run, pharmaceutical-funded news stations like we have in America, okay? And you find out because they take a little bit of the truth and they distort it to the nth degree to where it resembles nothing of what the facts are. Then you look at their references, then you look at their references, then you look at the local newspapers, then you look at the people actually on the ground, then you look at the history. Okay, so it takes a little bit of time, but when you look at this, Ebola has been around since 1976. It was named after a river in the Congo. Now, this is Ebola AIDS manufactured by the Western Pharmaceuticals U.S. Department of Defense. Now, that was the title of an article off in the head newspaper in Liberia. And I saw that and I thought, wow, that's an unusual thing to market there. And then when you look at this on the bottom, The Guardian, the U.S. government funding of Ebola trials on healthy humans comes amid warnings by top scientists in Harvard, Yale that such virus experiments are triggering a worldwide pandemic. Now, this virus has been around since 1976. Why are they starting to experiment on it? What's it there for? What's the purpose? Why would you want to promote this? Now, this is actually the t-shirts up there, Ebola is real. If you have a pandemic and bodies are stacked up like cordwood and you're hungry for outside funding, okay, you don't have any infrastructure, your population is dying, do you think you need to advertise it? Or wouldn't the population be aware of it? Well, I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, I mean, because if you look at the pharmaceutical-run news stations that we have in America, I'm sorry, what did I just say? When you look at the pharmaceutical-run news stations that we have in America, because does the pharmaceutical industry run our government? Yes, it does. Okay, and it runs off of panic and fear. I mean, it's brilliant, brilliant. Well, let's look at the past, because if you don't know where you've been, you're not going to know where you're going. Fear, 1957, Asiatic flu. There was actually an editorial in the Herald Express called Fear of Flu Propaganda. That's when we had, what's it called? Free press. Okay, West Nile virus, massive encephalitis. Okay, now what's wild is on these panics, on this fear, some people died. Okay, but when you look at the overall picture, what were they? And you got to look at this from a scientific perspective. A person that dies of a virus, did they? What was their immune system like before? How did they catch it? Our virus is alive. Okay, and so what I want you to do when you look at it, when you follow this research, a virus, for it to spread, you have to have a weakened immune system. It doesn't spread like the movies. Contagion can't happen, okay? You have to have, like let's say I developed Ebola, okay? Anyone in here have an open wound? I'd like to sneeze on it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You got to have an open wound and a weakened immune system. You won't do. Anyone live in a country with no infrastructure, no running water, no refrigeration? No, not this group. Okay. Well, anyway, that would weaken your immune system, yes? And so if I was to sneeze on an open wound and you had a weakened immune system that would allow this virus to grow, it would use your material, your host cells, to replicate. And then you would have to pass this on. This is why the only way to stop a virus like this is to do what Senegal and Nigeria are doing. I'm not going to tell you yet. But let me tell you, they're not passing out hazmat suits. They're heralded by the World Health Organization as stopping the virus. Okay, so what I want you to understand is a virus spreads by going host to host to use that immune system, and it has to be weak in order to spread. Okay, now here, 1957, 1999, West Nile, 2003, SARS. And look at this, at the start of it, we're talking 305 cases, 105 healthcare workers. Now, why would a third of the cases be healthcare workers? You might say, well, wow, those brave healthcare workers are getting in there, and they're brave. God bless them. Okay, but why are they getting infected so much? Well, we're going to check about that. Okay, now avian bird, the bird flu. Anybody remember Bush? Okay, I mean, he was a brilliant orator. Well, when it goes to bird, it's not a bad problem. Bird to person isn't a bad problem, but when it goes to person to person, that's a bad problem. Does anyone remember that? And it was like, are you serious? And you have the super flu can cure 2 million, if we're lucky, only 200,000. Okay, 200, 225, 225, going once, go. Okay, and then, of course, the pandemic H1N1 virus that's going to wipe out our planet. Okay, none of this actually happened. Okay, but what was it? Is there a consistent pattern with an actual virus, some people getting injured, but the panic spreading like wildfire in order to sell a massive amount of pharmaceutical products? Now, here's another one. Now, this is meningitis outbreak, the CDC declared. Now, I'm using this one, and this just happened a couple of years ago. A group of college students in New Jersey came down with meningitis B. Devastating, can actually kill. But how many people? Oh, 7 cases over 9 months. Now, there's a lot more college students than 7 college students in New Jersey and, California. So are we going to go in there and find out what caused this group of 7 over 9 months to develop meningitis? Are we going to check out their immune system? Are we going to check out their lifestyles? What caused it to develop? No. What the CDC allowed an unapproved vaccine to get emergency status. And this is why the panic is ensuing. Because in our government, the way it's structured, if you can attach either a pandemic or that it's an emergency, it can be approved without any testing. So doesn't have to be showed to even be effective against meningitis. It's just approved. And Pfizer got one, breakthrough therapy. Of course, we don't know if it's not tested long term. It's just sold on fear. And are they finding out what's wrong with it? And this is a little microcosm. It's almost like a test subject for Ebola, okay, where we can generate panic in America. When we look at this, and we're talking hemorrhagic fevers, and there's nothing more dramatic than a hemorrhagic fever. I mean, if you talk about bleeding from your orifices, your organ systems liquefying, I mean, that's not something I really want to get. But let's look at all of the hemorrhagic fevers. We're talking, yes, Ebola, Marburg, dengue fever, yellow fever, Lassa fever, CCHF, okay? And we're looking at it, and he's got these fevers all around the world. So it's not just Ebola. There's hemorrhagic, see, I'm trying to generate a massive panic, okay? Hemorrhagic fevers are everywhere, okay? My God, okay? But then again, what causes a virus to grow in a human being? Does it have to be a weakened immune system or a weakened immune system? Yeah, I'm going to make it really simple. I'll give you the answer. Okay. So I get on a real news station called Al Jazeera, and when this actually has information, and it's pretty cool. Granted, now they have the list of deaths and occurrences from Ebola from 1976 to the present day. And I know it's backwards, okay? Goes from the bottom up. But 1976, 88% death rate, Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, did the Congo, Democratic Republic in 1976, was there a revolution? Was there healthy water? Was there healthy infrastructure? Was there high stress? And so you start looking at this, you think, well, that would have been a factor, wouldn't it have? Sudan, okay, in 1977, there was only one case. Yes, he died. That was a 100% death rate. So you can manipulate the statistics. When you look at this, 79, no cases from 1979 to 1994. And you're thinking, wait a second. Okay, then you look at 1994 again. 100% survival rate. Okay, in 96. I want you to just look at this roughly, that Ebola has been here for a long time, but it only grows if you have a weakened immune system. It only grows if you have a weakened immune system. And you're talking, look at the death rates. It goes from 25% to 53, 78, 90, 83. But these are not massive numbers. When you're looking at these numbers, and these are the numbers of occurrences of Ebola from 1976 on. Now, a thinking mind might want to say, well, how do you diagnose Ebola? How do you find out? Is there a definitive blood test that shows that you actually have it? We look at this and we think, well, wait a second, 2014, this has gone haywire. So what caused it to increase so massively? Okay. Now, this is, and I put the articles up here, and I've got, again, I apologize for it being too wordy, but I want you to look at the dates. I want you to look at the title. I want you to look up the information so that you realize that this information is out there, but the average Joe isn't getting it. September 16th. Ebola is deadly, but malaria steals more lives. Now, officially, the Ebola epidemic started in December 2013, and it's going to now. That's when they arbitrarily started it. And when you look at this, somebody dies of malaria every 30 seconds. Talking to 500,000 kids every year die of malaria. So we're talking 100 times the amount of people die of malaria than they do of Ebola. So why don't we have troops on the ground? 100 times. Why don't we have, increase infrastructure? Why don't we increase the nutrients? Why don't we start sending vitamin C, healthy food? And when we look at this, November 2014, this is another good website, allafrica.com. This has news services right from there. West Africa, fewer Ebola cases in Liberia. Surge in Sierra Leone, though. Okay, as of the 29th of October, okay, now this is according to the World Health Organization, it's claimed 4,919 lives with 13,698 infections. Well, gee, that's a 64% survival rate. I mean, it sucks for the other 36%. Okay, but when we look at this, okay, that's, it's hard to get a death joke. But when you look at this, okay, how is it diagnosed? I mean, my God, these people are dying for sure. But what are they dying of? Do they have healthy infrastructure? Are we spending money on healthy wells, on water filtration systems, on nutrients? I mean, it sounds crazy, okay, and I don't know, I think this is actually a good present, but I've got 3 sisters. You know what I gave them last year for their birthday? Yeah, that's my sister giggling, okay. What'd I get you, Laura? A goat, okay. I got each one of my 3 sisters a goat, and it's a goat donated in their name to a village. Okay, I think that's good, okay. Because, no, I mean, it gives milk and stuff. I thought it was a cool present. I don't think they were happy. Okay, so when you look at this, where's the how is it diagnosed? Is this actual numbers? When we have 100 times more dying of malaria, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up that there would be this much drama. Now, Liberians, okay, warned not to celebrate too soon. What's the date on that? November. So this is in Liberia, the epicenter, the one where American media is saying 10,000, 30,000, the 90% death rate. Okay, have you heard this stuff? It's in the news. Bodies stacked up like cordwood, for God's sake. Okay, this is the gist of the article. Okay, a total of 39 confirmed, probable, and suspected cases were reported as of November 3rd. In across all Ebola treatment units in the country. Okay. In totally, he said 200 cases of the virus currently recorded across the entire country, but these are the ones that are confirmed, suspected, and probable. And I'm going, wait, confirmed, suspected? How do you bleed through the eyes and think you got a problem? Okay. Probable? I don't understand those words. So I started to find out, well, how are they diagnosing it? What's the criteria? Where does it come from? Because the American media is saying 30,000, are going to have it, 70% death rate. We got to send troops over, and for God's sake, roll up your sleeve and get the vaccine. It's coming over here. Heck, we're making sure it's coming over here. We're bringing the sick people over. Okay. So I look at, again, Liberia, the Monrovia, this is the capital, November 3rd, 2014, the head of the management team, and they report Lofa County. Wait, here. I want to show you this thing here. The bottom of it, Liberia is currently fighting a second outbreak of the deadly virus, and Lofa, and forgive my pronunciation, okay? I mean, I got trouble with English, okay? But Lofa County is one of the epicenters of the epidemic. One of the epicenters of the epidemic. That's dated November 3rd, okay? Same newspaper, November 3rd. Holy moly, 0 cases in 4 weeks. This is the newspapers on the ground. They're not, do you see the dichotomy here, that there's a challenge? Okay, 0 cases have been reported in multiple counties. Now here's an article by John Rappaport, because there's got to be a reason. What's the widespread? Bodies stacked up like cordwood, and then we're talking 39 maybe cases on, we're not quite sure, we can't tell. Okay, August 2014, they're enticing African countries to participate in testing and promoting vaccinations. Now, why would they do this? Okay. U.S. Department of Defense, human trials started weeks before the Ebola outbreak, and it did. Now, why would you take an obscure disease that's been around since 1976 and start testing a vaccine before an outbreak? And then you think, wait a second, Department of Defense contracted $140 million to a pharmaceutical company. Now, they did this back in July in 2013. Okay, so they're either, I mean, we could all relax because our government is either psychic or planning something. Okay, psycho. Okay, no, I said psychic. It means they can see into the future because they were investing in an obscure disease that never affected many people. Okay, and they're investing $140 million in vaccine and research, and they start injecting. And I think, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. How can they start human trials? So then I think, well, let me find out. Okay, sure enough, the vaccine manufacturers are saying, yeah, we're making this vaccine. This is the only way you're going to protect you. Because, my God, do you know there's 39 cases? Well, not real cases, suspected, probable, confirmed, in the epicenter, for goodness sake. Okay, mass vaccination program, it won't begin until June. So it's very important that we keep the panic up until June at least, okay? Hopefully we can keep it going until August. So, unless you look at the facts, okay? And then it's untested, unproven. How can something like this legally be brought about? Well, the vaccine manufacturers are shielded from any lawsuits, okay? And they're shielded because of this act, okay? I don't know if you know this, but in America, you have no liability if it's a pandemic, okay, or if it's part of the vaccine schedule. So you can make a product untested, unproven, say that it can, make you a better lover and protect you from Ebola in the same shot, okay, which is insane, okay, and sell it. Now, what I didn't know is the Public Readiness Emergency Preparedness Act, PrEP, provides immunity from liability, except for willful misconduct, from claims of loss caused out of relating to or resulting from administration or countermeasures to diseases, threats, or conditions determined by, and it actually was the Secretary of Health, involved in the development, manufacture, testing, distribution, and administration of such countermeasures. I didn't know that this act was already brought out for anthrax, botulism, the pandemic countermeasures from H1N1. This means that once they declared pandemic in 2009, even though we're talking 100 people had it, you couldn't sue the company. Now, it's interesting because this was one of the ones, West Africa, what are U.S. biological warfare researchers doing in the Ebola zone? And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm reading this and I'm thinking, is it real? Well, they list a first human Ebola clinical trial. By gosh, we have the internet. Let me look it up. And sure enough, I find it. And I think, wait a second, this is that $140 million that America invested in months before the Ebola epidemic. Okay, and it turns out they're looking for Ebola virus infection, a vaccine for it. And they were looking for enrollment. Okay, so somebody to get an experimental vaccine in an obscure African hemorrhagic fever, roll up the sleeve, let's check you out. Now, when you look at this, it started in January 2014. The epidemic wasn't started or officially started until December 2013. How long does it take to develop a vaccine, develop a protocol? Are you guessing 6 months to a year? Mm-hmm. So this was in production months and months and months before. Okay, you have to get approval for human trials months and months and months before. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So either the government is psychic, or we're getting, it doesn't smell like roses, okay? And then you start looking at this and you think, wait a second, December 15th, okay, BBC says the outbreak is over. The outbreak is over. It's done. They don't have any. And then you look at the Ebola outbreak coincided with UN vaccine campaigns. Wait a second, it's over. That there's nobody on the ground dying like the numbers, even close to the numbers that we think, but they're trying to promote the vaccine. This was a brilliant article, again, out of the front page of the Libertine. Ebola AIDS manufactured by the Western Pharmaceuticals and Department of Defense. Now, he brings up 5 different points, and it was on the front page. The world must be alarmed. Every enclave on earth should be astonished. African people, notably citizens of more particularly Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, are victimized, dying every day. When we look at this, it was on the front page. He details out 5 points. Now, I don't know. If I can't corroborate, okay, some of the accusations, then I can't list them as facts. So if somebody says there's a human vaccine trial going on now, okay, and I look up and I find it beautiful, okay, that's good. I can't corroborate what he's talking about. Like first he says Ebola is genetically modified. Don't know. Okay, don't know. I have no research behind it. Ebola has a terrible history and testing has been secretly taking place in Africa. Again, I don't know. There's a lot of people suspecting it. There's a lot of information out there that says it, but I couldn't really find it, okay? When he says sites have been set up around Africa and West Africa for years, testing for emerging diseases, especially Ebola. That is true. Okay, there are several different areas. This is where they've tested the AIDS, they've tested a lot of polio vaccines, they've tested a lot of experimental vaccines because, in the pharmaceutical industry, if you want to experiment on something that could be deadly and toxic and poisonous and contagious, you find an area that doesn't have a media. And it's cruel and horrible, but it's true. 4, the need for legal action to obtain redress for damages. Okay, yeah, good luck with that one. The people have to get behind it. They have to be aware. This is the type of information that has to spark that interest. Okay, once you see this stuff, you can't go back to living in the matrix. African leaders and African countries need to take the lead in defending the babies, children, African women. Absolutely. Now, again, there's not officially a lot of people dying, but there is officially a huge panic. And they have to keep the panic going. So when you look at this, what other news articles did I find reading the local papers? Well, August, a man caught dumping formaldehyde into a community water supply. Now these are not, again, you've got one well, one water source, very easy to poison it. it would be very hard to poison a water source in Huntington Beach because we get it from, a massive central location. Mobbed by the community, he confessed he'd been paid to put formaldehyde in the well. He was not the only one. We are many. There are agents in the different communities around there. He said he was paid by the water company and those bagging minerals. It's interesting. This is the symptoms of formaldehyde poisoning. When we look at it, corrosion of the gastrointestinal tract, ulcers in the mouth, abdominal pain, diarrhea, hemorrhage, blood in the urine and kidneys, vomiting, nausea, renal, very similar. Okay. Now, of course, when you look at this, again, this is another one. This one I couldn't corroborate. Okay, but it makes sense with so few people officially being diagnosed with this. Okay, are they trying to generate some other panic and fear? Healthcare workers given fake vaccinations are believed to be killing people. People dressed as nurses are going to communities with Ebola vaccines. Once injected, it produces Ebola-like symptoms, shortly going into a coma shortly thereafter. Now, when I'm looking into this, now they're talking about a vaccine being available June next year. They're talking about vaccine trials currently going on in the lab, not in the field. But also when you look at the information in the local papers, they're already spreading vaccines in the area. And I'm looking for where did they get it? Who's manufacturing it? Where was this tested? Are they telling the population that this is an untested, unproven, unapproved with absolutely no recourse? Now, this is brilliant. Now, the point, this is a newspaper that's been around since 1969, award-winning. Again, September 23rd, Ebola update. Nigeria and Senegal, both affected by the worst Ebola outbreak, are managing to stop the spread of the disease according to the World Health Organization. No, you're supposed to say, wow, they spread this in September. They stopped it. They stopped the spread. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, my God, where did they get the 140 million hazmat suits? Okay, so they didn't do it. Okay, they found out, and you're talking in no new deaths in Guinea, Sierra Leone, 39 in Liberia. So they're confirming the information that we've gotten from other news sources. Then you think, well, wait a second. They have 150 cases recorded for the virus, 70 dead people. And it's interesting, but this one bottom here, 8 people were killed in Guinea, among them 2 journalists, the deputy governor, 5 healthcare workers, and they were killed by the people. The people are thinking that they're spreading this idea and thought and disease. Now, and this is from the National Geographic, okay, praising Senegal and Nigeria on 4 lessons on how to stop Ebola infection. How to stop Ebola infection. Now, you might be saying, well, wait a second, how can they stop it? They don't have modern medicine. These are backward people. They don't have infrastructure. They don't have clean water. How are they doing it? Well, they're doing it with stuff that Americans don't have. It's called common sense. Okay? They're taking charge of their health. They're not exposed to insanity, okay, and fear. They're used to being on their own. And so you start looking at this, you think, well, wait a second. In Guinea, 1,500 people had it and 900 died. Senegal, there's been 1 case with no deaths. Nigeria, 20 people, 7 of whom died. And they stopped it. It's the most populous country in Africa. 174 million people. And the World Health Organization declared that Nigeria's spread had been halted. And I love the comment from the WHO. If a country like Nigeria, hampered by serious security problems, can do this, any country in the world experiencing an imported case of Ebola can hold onward transmission to just a handful of cases. So America need not panic. Okay, we just have to follow what they're doing. I'm sorry, does anyone want to know what 4 steps they did? Yes. Okay. Trace and isolate. Okay, that means you find somebody that has the disease, and remember, there's no real blood test that shows you, well, I'm going to show you the blood test in a minute, But if somebody is coughing and spitting up or coughing, or you isolate them, you find out who they were in contact with. This is the same way that smallpox got corrected back in the 70s. It wasn't the vaccines. It was trace, isolate, and let them recover. Detect early before lots of people can get infected. And that would be fever, symptoms. Strong leadership is essential, okay? Not corporate-run leadership like what we have now, okay, trying to sell a toxic thing. These are actual leaders who care about their people, who are saying, look, we got to get together, we got a problem, let's solve it. They're not in Liberia giving T-shirts out to say, no, you really still got to panic, you know, it's still real. Okay, no, these are people that the strong leaders made a top national effort. Now, it's interesting, the public needs to be part of the solution. So they had actors from Nollywood. I'm sorry, anyone know what Nollywood is? I actually didn't. I thought it was a misprint. Okay, it turns out this is Nigerian cinema. They're second in the world to Bollywood, okay, in India. I mean, just brilliant, okay, and I'm going, oh my gosh, this is a whole different culture I didn't know about. I mean, they're brilliant, but they're getting the people behind it. They're saying, look, you know, if you're sick, you stay home, you take care of yourself, you drink water, do what mom said, you know, take care of yourself. I mean, it's just, it seems too simple. Again, remember, the vaccine, once it's declared a pandemic or once it's declared an emergency, if you're getting it, you have no recourse for it. It's not tested, it's unproven, it's unsafe. Okay. How do doctors test for Ebola? Okay. Now, how do you test for it? Okay. Is there, because you're going to see that is definitive or not. Dr. Bruce Hirsch, an infectious disease specialist, said the symptoms are extremely nonspecific in the beginning. Ebola looks like almost anything. No kidding. Fever, severe headache, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, unexplained hemorrhage. Could that be malaria? Yes. Could it be tuberculosis? Yes. I was watching a special on Ebola, and they had this man. He was in his late 60s, not a real healthy guy. Okay, he was in I think it was Liberia, and he was just declared Ebola free, and he was going to get out of the hospital. And the nurse was talking to the cameraman. He says, "No, he's not really getting out of the hospital. He's got tuberculosis. We're going to keep him here." So but now think of this. How many people in that country have tuberculosis, have syphilis or gonorrhea or a bout of malaria, have some other type of infectious disease, but now, since it's popular, it's now considered Ebola. Okay? Then you look at the test, and this is some of the test, and this is again off of an infectious disease expert. The PCR test, polymerase chain reaction test. What they do is, it looks for a little bit of genetic material in your body, and then it multiplies it a whole bunch, and then says, "Wow, this is the virus." Okay, this is the part of whatever's trying to attack you. Now remember, for a virus to be big enough to kill you, okay, or to give you a disease, there has to be a lot of it. So they're using the PCR test to hopefully find it when it's not there, and then it duplicates it. Now, when you look at this, you see, well, PCR is really a definitive test. What does definitive mean? Maybe doesn't mean what I thought it means. It means it defines it, right? It's for sure. It's guaranteed, right? That's what I thought that's what it meant. Okay, however, the Journal of Clinical Microbiology in 2002 says the PCR test can yield false negatives. Okay, so that says it's not accurate. The ELISA test is also used, but this can take longer and antibodies can be detected. So the ELISA test might be able to work, might not be. Okay, but let's look more into this because I wasn't quite sure. So I imagine, what if I was going to go to Africa? Okay, and let's say, since I'm a healthcare professional, what would the government recommend for me? Well, here's a thing off the Department of Defense, a fact sheet for healthcare workers that are going to Africa. And they say, and this was dated August 5th, the U.S. FDA has issued an emergency authorization use authorization to authorize the use of this PCR assay test. Now it's interesting because they're authorizing the use of the PCR test, and what do they say down here? At this time, no FDA-approved cleared test identify the existence of the Ebola virus. So wait a second. One says it's definitive. The other one says it doesn't work right. This one says there's nothing really there, but it's the best we got. And then you start, and this is again, by the way, off the FDA.gov site. And then, so I start looking at it and I think, well, wait a second. I did a talk on this. And what were they? ELISA is 51 out of 100 false positives. PCR is 51 false. ELISA is not true. On Lancet, you're looking Archives of Family Medicine. These tests are not accurate. See, if you test for a virus, it doesn't mean that you're sick from it. Okay, if you have Ebola, does that mean you don't have malaria, TB, syphilis? No, none of that stuff matters. Because remember, viruses use your host DNA. You have to have a weakened immune system for it to replicate. And think of this. Okay, you're in the jungles. You're off a dirt road. Okay, 2 hours in Nigeria or Liberia. You got to get a blood sample from a patient, then you got to put it in a car, you got to fly to a place or drive to a place that's got some type of electricity, okay, and some type of fresh water. Then it takes about 4 days in order to check it, and hopefully, how often are you going to do this? So those 5,000 people that died, this is why 39 cases. Suspected, I don't know, he might have TB. He's coughing up blood, but so did Doc Holliday.
Starvation.
It could be. Well, I mean, if you don't feed someone for 8 days, they can show positive test on an inverted T cell count, so they look like they got HIV. Now, when we look at this, non-virus causes attributed to Ebola, and this is the same symptoms. Okay, we're talking fever, fatigue, sweating, bleeding, vomiting, diarrhea. What would be another cause, okay, of the Ebola-like symptoms? Could it be malnutrition? Could it be displacement by war, poverty, lack of sanitation, open sewage, crowded living? Pesticides, are they exposed to pesticides? Yeah, what about the organophosphates? Do those explode the intestinal tract of insects? What do you think that's going to do to a human being? Think it's going to liquefy the organs? Unrefrigerated medical supplies, we're talking a massive overuse of antibiotics, which is poisonous mold. You're talking vaccine campaigns that push. I mean, if they say if you're sick, you shouldn't get a vaccine. A population in these living conditions, are they going to respond the way a healthy, fed human's going to respond to? No. It just doesn't make any sense. So what's causing the healthcare workers to get sick? Well, when we look at this, healthcare workers are wearing the hazmat suits, okay, on and off about an hour and a half to 2 hour shifts. You're going to lose upwards about 5 liters of body fluid. Okay, so now you're in the suit, you're sweating, okay, you're breathing in a lot more carbon dioxide. Okay, you take the suit off, what are you going to wash off with? Water would be good, but I'm sorry, this is the hospital area. Okay, what are you going to wash off with? Chemicals, okay, chlorine, bleach, something like that, something antimicrobial, antiviral. Now that's going to wipe out your normal flora, okay? Then you're going to hydrate with something else, okay? Now this is all weakening the immune system. Now I'm also thinking, well, wait a second. When I'm talking to my Orange County housewife, I say, well, okay, you're right. The other countries are dirty. America's clean. Wow. Okay, where that came from, who knows? Okay. Was she back in the colonial era? Okay, so that's completely not true. And I said, okay, I'm going with you. What's the cleanest place in America? She said, well, hospitals. I said, okay, so we're trying to stop an infection. So what are we going to do with the infection? We're going to stop Ebola? Okay, let's put everybody in a nice, clean hospital. And I think, well, wait a second. Aren't 75,000 people a year killed in American hospitals because they're too damn clean? Okay. Anybody see the difference here? 5,000 people a year die, okay, from a deadly African virus, okay, that there's no infrastructure, but we have 75,000 people a year dying in the most modern hospitals because they're so clean. Okay, now again, this is out of the New England Journal of Medicine. You're talking that's almost 1 million people, 722,000 people contract an infection in a hospital that's supposed to be germ-free. Obviously, germs don't cause disease. It has to do with a weakened immune system. Okay, if you use a disinfectant, you're only going to be left with the stronger germs. Vaccine campaigns are one of the causes of outbreaks. And this is just an idea, but if these people have a compromised immune system, they get a vaccine, they get sick, they don't get healthy. When we look at this, these are the vaccines that if you are a healthcare worker, you're going to be recommended or required. I'm sure you can, slip some money and get away without them. But how would you like to have a hepatitis A, hepatitis B, meningitis, a polio, a rabies, a typhoid, and a yellow fever? Then put your hazmat suit on. Make sure you wash in the antibacterial stuff. Lose about 5 liters of water. Work in a stressful condition. Take off the hazmat suit. Make sure, because you're freaked out about germs, you're going to, wash in a little bit of chlorine and water or something else. Are you going to have the healthiest immune system? No. A selenium deficiency, and this is out of the Journal of Orthomolecular Psychiatry, or Orthomolecular Medicine, sorry. Selenium deficiency can stop infections. What this means is if you are deficient or toxic in something, you're going to be susceptible to disease. So when I originally talked about sneezing on somebody, it wouldn't work unless they have a weakened immune system. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is actually what we need to be sending to Liberia to help those 39 people that are infected. We don't need to send 3,000 troops, on the ground unless they're armed with blueberries and bananas, fresh water, tomatoes. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, by God, let's save them. Let's get those 3,000 troops over there, shovels, and have them dig friggin' wells. Okay, actually do something for the good of the people. This is absolutely what you require. This is what you require to stop an Ebola infection. Well, I should turn off or change the station on the TV. That would be primary. Okay. But don't let fear guide yourself. Okay, and this is in every action. Don't let it stop you from getting in a relationship. Okay, don't let it stop you from doing something business. But for God's sake, don't let it stop or guide your health care. Oh, I have to get a vaccine for my kid. And what's the common thing that a parent's going to say? Is she afraid of polio or she can't get into school? Can't get into school. You never hear somebody afraid of the chicken pox. Okay, so we need to change that mindset. You need a healthy nerve supply. You need regular exercise. You need a proper nutrition. You need sufficient rest. That's it. Okay, it's really simple. Now, next week, we're going to have an open forum so everybody on the internet can email us your questions or put them on there. But the open forum is going to be on everything. Okay, the source of life and health. Okay, so thank you very much.